for coming. We've got lots to do, and we'll make this just an hour long, and be aware that we will not answer every single question in an hour, and that's just okay. As I mentioned in the talk today, which by the way will of course be on our YouTube channel, as will this session. We're recording today and streaming today, and so this will be on our YouTube channel also. I want to give a huge shout out and thanks to Bob Adderhold, Catherine Jordan, and Bernadine Joslin, longtime members of FUS. I don't know what had happened if we tried to total up your total number of years. But you help hold us together and help call us forward. And so we are so grateful for your leadership today. I want to introduce Bernadine Joslin. Bernadine, you live up in Grand Rapids, is that right? And you've made the drive to come today. So really grateful to have you here, and you'll let us know what we're going to do.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be in this beautiful space, and I had the pleasure during the service this morning to sit with some new people who were guests and here for the first time, and I was so proud of our family here in our congregation. And just sitting with them in the audience, including Stephanie, who's here today, is here for the first time. And our UU community made a beautiful impression on Stephanie. And she shared with me during the coffee hour that how welcome she feels and well prepared. Like Kelly said, a beautiful scene for us that we're going to dig a little deeper. And I love the way Kelly talked about it, to discern whether we as a congregation have the capacity to host a Ukrainian family. I'm really, it's a pleasure to introduce Stephanie. She and I actually met on a Zoom call. Many of us have this stories these days, meeting on Zoom. She's been working hard with Alight, formerly the American Refugee Committee, to help Minnesotans be part of the solution. And as Kelly mentioned, we in this congregation do have a long history of welcoming refugees, not only the Tibetans, but last year with Afghan families. So with that, Stephanie, thank you for joining us on a Sunday. Come on up. We're anxious to hear more from you about what that might look like for us. Please join me in thanking Stephanie for being here.
Okay, thank you all so much. Perfect, thank you. Yes, you'll hear me say next slide throughout this, so just bear with me as Jacob so kindly is going to help me kind of go through this presentation. As Bernadine mentioned, which once you know, I was going to say once again, but it's because I've been telling all of these lovely folks here. I'm just so grateful to Catherine, to Bernadine, to Bob, to Kelly for welcoming me into your beautiful space. Today I've been so inspired already, and it's like noon. That's amazing. That's beautiful. That's awesome. You know, Kelly really set a beautiful scene, and she both talked about, you know, the sadness and the sorrows and the difficulty of what's happening in Ukraine, but also spoke to the hope and the joy and what's possible. And that's what we're so proud to really highlight at Alight, is that. And I'll continue to talk to you a little bit about who we are, and then I'll get into what sponsorship is, why it's important, what it looks like. But what we're really proud of at Alight is that we walk on the journey of displacement with people from all over the world, and we want to recognize immediate needs, of course, things like shelter, food, clothing, safety, sanitation, but also things that go beyond that each one of us feel called to do as well. Goals, dreams, belief systems. We want to honor all of that, you know, the depth and the breadth of the human being, and make sure that we're doing that every step of the way. And so I'm going to start with that and lead with that, because I do think that's the most important aspect of everything that I'll talk about today, is that if you sat back and thought about what would I need? What would support me if me, my family, my friends, my children, my mom, my dad was also on a journey of displacement? How would I want to be welcomed, greeted? How would I want to find safety? Kind of having you step into that seat a bit, which is a really difficult thing to do. And most of us, have our own experiences, our own life experiences. I don't know each one of you and your own life experiences, but starting with that and really looking at this through a lens of human-centeredness is really absolutely essential. So as many people already said, my name is Stephanie. I work for ALIGHT, which was formerly the American Refugee Committee. We are based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're right in Northeast. And we've been around for over 45 years. I'm going to have you go to the next slide. So you can see on this slide, we are all over the world. Walking on the journey of displacement with people takes us all over, based on, lots of different forms of displacement and different programs that support people. So from Rwanda to Kenya to Germany to Mexico to Pakistan, it looks really different based on not only what is going on in someone's life, but we also believe in asking people who are on that journey themselves, what do you need most and how can we best support that? And so it's taken us all over the world. We're operating right now in over 20 countries, and we're working with over 3.5 million people per year. And within each country, as I mentioned, it looks really different. It might look like water and sanitation. It might look like housing. It might look like livelihoods. It might look like protection. Based on the human beings that are there and what they need, we adjust the services that we provide. And I know that you saw that video, which I was so grateful that Kelly shared. But we have been on the ground in Ukraine and Poland since just days after the invasion of Russia. And I'll have you go to the next slide. And I'm going to talk about what that looks like, what our programming there looks like, and how it's kind of taken us, to where we're at right now. We are going to focus today on sponsorship, and I'm going to talk to you about what sponsorship means. I want to note at the top of this that you may have heard a lot of other news stories and programs that have actually just started that also offer other pathways of sponsorship. We're going to talk about Uniting for Ukraine today that helps support Ukrainian families, but there are also pathways of sponsorship for Cubans, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, and Haitians that are open right now. And the federal government just announced something called Welcome Corps. It was a huge announcement because it really opens pathways for anyone who has the designation of refugee to be able to come to the United States and find safety here, build a home here. So I'm just going to note those because I've had people call me and say, okay, what's the difference between all these different things? We're going to focus on Uniting for Ukraine, which is a pathway for Ukrainians, but there are several other pathways for other people who may be living other places as well. I'm going to have you go to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, many people have been displaced because of the war in Ukraine. And 7 million Ukrainians, this is the most reported number. I will say that you probably know reported numbers are often not what's actually happening. It's far beyond 7 million, but that is the most accurate reported number that we have. Most of them being women, children, and the elderly have fled Ukraine in the wake of Russia's invasion. This has been happening since about a year ago now. Many of those people have fled to neighboring European countries. Our team is on the ground, has been on the ground, offering support in Poland, also offering support in Ukraine, helping people cross to safety, helping people get Airbnb housing, helping people get flights to other places, really being that assistance in places like bus stations, train stations, really offering that first form of support. And from there, what we've heard after the United States announced in April of 2022, this Uniting for Ukraine program, is that many people were interested in finding safety in the United States as well. And so that is what Uniting for Ukraine does. It offers a pathway for a Ukrainian individual or family to come to the United States for an initial 2-year period. And I'll have you go to the next slide. This pathway at first was announced that it would offer space for 100,000 Ukrainians. It then went to 125,000 Ukrainians, and now it's actually been uncapped. There is no specific amount What the federal government has said is that they've seen the need, there continues to be a need, and they see also the desire, and so they don't want to cap it right now, they want to open it for more and more people. So it offers this pathway, and I'll say that this slide needs to be changed. We got confirmation that it's above 125,000 last week, and that's what's key with our program too, is we want to always provide the most up-to-date information, and that means sometimes, it's changing every day, but make sure that we speak to that as well. But it allows people to come for an initial 2-year period. That 2-year period is designated as humanitarian parole. And what it really offers is that the Ukrainian family can come to the United States, stay for 2 years. There are other immigration pathways after that if they'd like to continue staying. But the big asterisk with this is that the family's only able to journey here, the individual is only able to journey here, only given travel authorization if they have a sponsor in the United States who says, I'm willing to support this family, I'm willing to provide various levels of support as this family comes here, and I'm going to do my best to help this family build a foundation during their stay. What we're doing at Alight is pairing with people like you who might be interested on your journey of discernment as well. I love that Kelly used that term. That's something that I talked about in our first conversation, is that this is truly a discerning process for people who think this might be something they're interested in. We want it to be a discernment process because we do believe that it takes intention, it takes care, it takes commitment, and we're there with you through the process. I'll talk to you about how Alight is going to work with you through that process, but we want you to really think about if this is something that feels like the right call for you to make as well, and the right call for you to respond to. And so we're working with amazing sponsor groups to help get Ukrainian families here in the United States to safety. Many of those groups have been in Minnesota. I'm really proud to say we have over 90 sponsor groups somewhere in the process. And I'll say somewhere in the process because in a moment or two, I'll speak to the fact that it's a journey from the day that you say, yes, I want to do this, to the day that the family arrives. But we've had about 35 families successfully arrive here in Minnesota. I'm going to talk to you about a few of those families. And we have about 60 families who are on their way. Next slide, please. So what is sponsorship? That's a big question, and I'm going to tackle it today. As Kelly said, we have about an hour together. The other thing I always want to mention as we start the conversation is that the conversation can continue going, and we can continue talking more about things as you start to discern more, as you have more questions. We will have time for questions, and I welcome any and all, but I want to start by setting the scene of what sponsorship is. Sponsors are truly the support systems that help anchor a family and provide a foundation for them to build off of. They're neighbors, they're cheerleaders, they're guides. As I mentioned at the beginning, imagining if you or your brother or your sister or your child or your grandchild was coming to a country after being displaced, what type of community would you want there to support them? What type of community would you want there to welcome them? That's what we believe sponsors are, is these truly welcoming people who are there to be a guide for a family or an individual as they've made a really long and difficult journey. More specifically, and I know we mentioned some of these things, but I'll get into all the details. Sponsors are there to help find temporary housing. They're there to support the family in getting signed up for local resources. We are a connector for that, and I'll talk to you about that. They're helping get kids enrolled in school, helping adults find work, and really being an advocate for that family along the journey of really starting in this new place. And next slide, please. Why does sponsorship matter? We started this program back in August, and I was giving a very similar presentation then. I proudly say that now we've welcomed so many families, we've had so many sponsors in the process, that I can speak to this in really tangible ways that have true families attached to it. Becoming a sponsor is that commitment. We're going to talk about what that commitment looks like. but it's also one of the most meaningful ways that you can help a family who've had to leave their lives behind start in this place, start in your own community. These families have had to make really hard decisions. We've talked with a lot of families who don't know, should I leave Ukraine? My mom's still here, my dad's still here, my brother's still here, but I want to build this life for my children. I want to make sure they're safe. They've had to make these really difficult decisions. And so sponsors, we're going to know you're making a difficult decision too, but it's going to open this really transformative experience for you to have and for the family to have as well. And we've really seen that. We've had the first family arrived, I believe it was end of September. The last family who's most recently arrived was last week. And we've seen these families progress in beautiful ways. Of course, holding space for the fact that they continue to hear about their families still in Ukraine, continue to hear about, things that are going wrong in their own home country, but who've also built really beautiful things while they've been here, gotten their kids enrolled in school, gotten jobs, done things like take their Minnesota driver's test, which I don't want to take again. We have people doing things like that, learning what a snow emergency is. It's all the beautiful, really, really amazing parts of seeing your kids go to school and have their first day of school, and also being like, okay, I can't park on this side of the street. It's all those things that a sponsor is also part of for a family. I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. So I'm sure you're wondering, how the heck do I get connected to a Ukrainian family? I will say we still have team members in Poland and in Ukraine connecting with people who want to make their way here. We also have partnered with an organization called Welcome.us that has a matching platform. What they've built is the ability for strangers to meet strangers. I always hesitate to say this, but it really paints the picture well. If you've ever been on a dating site, or you've had a friend who's been on a dating site, or maybe you have a child who's on a dating site, it's similar where you create a profile and also the family creates a profile, and you're able to chat, connect, and kind of find the best fit. It's not a dating site. I always say that. It's not a dating site. But it does offer the opportunity, as someone who's been on dating sites in my life, it does look very similarly to that, where you're able to really find the best fit. And also that's part of the discernment process. We've had people who've chatted with 3 or 4 families and decided this family's the right one. I actually just got an email from a sponsor group on Friday, and I'm not saying every sponsor group will be like this, but they said, we've been talking to 2 families. We really want to make it work that our group can actually support both families. Can we do that? And I said, you can absolutely do that. We're going to adjust your fundraising efforts. We're going to adjust the support that we have. But we've seen people really connect with people that they feel like are who they would like to be a welcomer of, are who they would like to sponsor. And that powerful connection is built from that platform. And so if you decide that this is the path that you want to go through, we have advice for people to make group profiles. You tell people about your community. You're able to set certain limits and different things on your profile. Once again, similar to a dating site. So you can say, I'm willing to sponsor 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. But that'll actually help the matching algorithm so that you're talking with people who fit this amount of support that you can give and the capacity that you have. And that's really important for us to speak to as well. What we have built at Alight is a program to support sponsors. We have 2 Alight guides. They are both Ukrainian themselves. We assign them to different sponsor groups, and they are your guide throughout your journey of sponsorship. They're there as a support system to not only tell you, here's your next step, here's your next step, here's your next step, but they're there to connect you with local resources to make sure you are working through the system, it feels as smooth as possible, to make sure that you feel connected to somebody, you're not confused, and you have a point person to ask questions to throughout the entirety of the process. And that's not only at the point that you decide, I want to do this thing, but that's when you're matching with a family, when you've decided that's the family that you want to sponsor, when you're preparing for their arrival after they've arrived. We have a program that's designed to support you through that whole process so that you can also create the best experience possible for the family once they arrive. I'll have you go to the next slide. I know we talked about this. I myself, back in August, I was watching the news, I was seeing what was going on. I felt really powerless. I really did. I felt like, okay, me sitting in my home in Northeast Minneapolis, what the heck can I do? I thankfully was able to find a position that really directly related to what I could do. But this is a way where you can actually make the difference. And I loved the starfish story because it is so true, where I think, for me, I've spent many, many nights lying awake, worried about all the families that, people are connected to, all the families that we haven't connected with. But then I'm reminded of the stories of the families who have come here and started to thrive and have told me, back in Ukraine, our apartment was blown up. We had to leave in the middle of the night. We made it to Poland somehow safely. We were sleeping on a gym floor for 2-3 weeks. And then we got connected to this family here in the United States who said, we want to help you get to safety. And now that family has been able to say, we have our daughters in school, we're not scared. We have a roof over our head. We've now been able to build a space here. They still have the desire to go back home, but they know for right now, they've built a safe community for their family to thrive in for the next 2 years. And have you go to the next slide. So what does sponsorship entail? And one of the big things I always want to say, and I have a feeling that all of you in this community know this, but I always want to repeat it, is that each family and each sponsor group is unique. They're custom. They're going to interact with one another differently. They're going to have other needs. They're going to have different desires. And we at Alight are there to speak to that custom position that both the family and the sponsor group is in. I am going to talk about things that we believe that we've built our program on are must-haves to help this family thrive. But then there's going to be a lot of in between. I had a sponsor who said, we've become really close with our family. We're going to invite them on spring vacation this year. And I was like, great. I'm not going to tell every sponsor group that that's what they need to do, but that family and that sponsor group have become really close, and that's something they want to do. It's not necessarily what you need to do. There's all different types of ways to really engage with that family, and also to listen to what the family would like for engagement as well, which is absolutely essential. But I am going to talk to you about those key things that kind of guide what sponsorship is. So it looks like forming a team. As Kelly mentioned, we've seen teams that generally are in the area of about 4 to 8 individuals. Those are kind of the key team members. I received an email update from a gentleman who's sponsoring a family, and he sends email updates. They're the most beautiful emails I read. I love them. And he has about 80 people on the CC. Not all 80 people are in that sponsor group, but all 80 people have somehow impacted that family's life and are part of the community that welcomed that family. So it maybe looks like one person isn't part of that core group, but they're the person that's bringing dinner. They set up a meal train. Maybe, they're not part of that 4 to 8, group of people, but there's somebody that donated to the GoFundMe to support the family. There's ways to bring in people all across. And one of the big things that we talk about that's missing when you go to a new place is social capital. We probably all have somebody that if our toilet isn't working and we're not good with toilets, we probably have somebody that we can call before we call a plumber to help us kind of figure out what's going on. We want to help build that for families as well. And having those group members helps build that social capital. I will say, I've spoken to other congregations where maybe 30 people are interested. What they've kind of decided is they've, broken up into 3 different groups where they're like, us 30 people are really interested in this initiative, but 30 people is going to be a hard group, a hard amount of people to have really engaged with families. So they've broken up and said, okay, we're going to do 3 groups. We're going to have these 5 people be really committed, and then those 5 people kind of just be on the outskirts. So there's lots of unique ways for you to form a group. That group, why we talk about a group, is that group will be then connected to one family. You're going to attend trainings. We have an e-learning training that steps through every single thing that you need to do to prepare for that family's arrival. We're going to have you get plugged into that welcome.us website to help connect with a family, figure out who you'd like to sponsor, and then you're going to fill out an I-134A form. So an I-134A form, and I'm noting it does say I-134 form, it just recently changed to the I-134A form, not a big difference, just something that, of course, the federal government decided was important to add an A onto something. But the I-134A form is going to be filled out, and what that does is provides the family with travel authorization if it's approved. So the reason why you need to match with a family first is that it's unique to each person that you're sponsoring, and it helps open that pathway for them to make their way to the United States. During this process, anywhere during this process, you're going to start fundraising. As Kelly mentioned, it's about $5,000 to $10,000 that we recommend. Why we recommend a sliding scale is based on the family size. You know, a family size of 2 looks a lot different than a family size of 5. We can make a specific recommendation. What I've told most groups is shoot for $10,000. Every single group, and I really mean this, has gotten very close, if not surpassed by quite a bit, their fundraising goal. At the very beginning of this program, people who've done this for longer than I had said, just so you know, the easiest part for every group is fundraising. And I said, I don't really believe that. Like, I don't know. It 100% has been. Most of our groups have called me at some point and said, we're over our goal. Is that bad? Like, what do we do? And I'm like, no, just keep it going for a little bit more. But we're here to also support you in making a really detailed budget that makes sense for that family. And then helping arrange day one accommodations for the family. I'm going to have you go to the next slide. So after arrival, it looks like being at the airport to greet the family. Maybe that's one person in your group. Maybe that's all 10 of you. You know, maybe it's 5 of you and you invite your friends and neighbors to be there. At the end, you'll see a picture of the first sponsor group welcoming at the family. It's a really beautiful, beautiful thing. Often the family's very tired, but it's really wonderful to see this group of people who've rallied together to create this path of safety. Like, how meaningful is that? So being part of that airport arrival, helping them get settled in temporary housing. So one of the key things that the fundraising efforts point to is temporary housing. Temporary housing looks a little bit different for each group. We recommend that you secure temporary housing for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the family's arrival. That is important because it gives them time to just breathe a little bit. It also provides some gap support, and that gap support is going to help just kind of bridge that gap between them arriving and then the resources that they'll be able to get signed up for. So that temporary housing can look like a few different things. It can look like an Airbnb. We've had many groups go that route where they've fundraised to help support an Airbnb, a longer term hotel stay. It can also look like somebody hosting in their home. So let's say in your sponsor group you have somebody who says, I have a guest room, I'm happy to host for 6 to 8 weeks. You can definitely go that route. I'm also going to note I've had about 4 different groups come to me and say, I got to buy some extra toilet paper and some groceries. Can I use my fundraising dollars for that in my home? Absolutely. Those fundraising efforts are meant to support making that home, whatever it looks like, comfortable for the family and offsetting costs if you're hosting in your own home. It looks like guiding them through government resources. So one thing that I think can be really overwhelming is you say, okay, so I'm fundraising money, but then how do they get set up for independence? How do they get set up for self-sufficiency? And that is really important for the families. Most families that we've had come here have been like, I love this support, but I really want to make sure that I feel independent and I got to make choices and I get to be doing my next step. Resettlement agencies here are absolutely key in the process. At Alight, we're going to help get you connected to all the local resources that will help set the family up for success. Those local resources look like cash assistance programs. Those cash assistance programs are on a sliding scale based on the family. So Let's say the family travels with a 90-year-old grandparent. Cash assistance for that 90-year-old grandparent is going to look a lot different than a 19-year-old. So you can see there's kind of a different amount of sliding scale of benefits. The family will meet with a case manager. Their situation will be assessed. From that point, they will get cash assistance, food assistance, so the SNAP program, and then also medical assistance. So there's like 3 key programs that are absolutely essential to get the family signed up for. That gap assistance that you're providing, those fundraising efforts, are meant to kind of be a holding space for the family before they're able to get into that process, and also before they're able to, if they're of working age, get a job. And so one thing that's really accelerated the process for Ukrainians is they are eligible for work upon arrival in the United States. They still have to file for employment authorization, but it's helped a lot of people be able to get on their feet a lot faster. It's been a policy that was announced about 2 months ago, and we've seen it work really well for people who have newly arrived. At Alight, we've also connected with local landlords. We're open to helping people after that temporary housing get into more permanent housing that is designed for people who have newly arrived in the country, maybe don't have a credit score or don't have a credit score, don't have a rental history. We've also connected with people who want to provide people with jobs. We've connected with other nonprofits that have different programs. English language learning classes, school programs, all of these different programs that are also there to support so that your sponsor group isn't alone in this process. It's going to be advocating and helping and cheering on adults when they interview for jobs, maybe helping them practice interviewing for a job, helping maybe find daycare if that's necessary. I will say we haven't had that need quite yet. We haven't seen that be one of the driving things. It's happened a few times, but one of the bigger things is actually having kids get enrolled in school. That's what we've seen. And it's there for the in-between things. You know, for calling someone and talking to them about what a snow emergency is, for bringing them cookies, for, you know, making sure that they get what they need and maybe they get where they need to go, and being that support system. What we've seen works best is that the sponsor group is there as a heavier support system for the first 3 months of the family's arrival in the United States. We then recommend that the sponsor group starts kind of shifting their relationship to the family from that support system to a friend and a neighbor. It really helps the family kind of step into their own a bit in a way that they really desire, and also, of course, you know, speaks to the fact that I know all of you have lots of things going on in your life too. You know, being that support system is really essential, but also building that time in so that after those 3 months, you're still there as a friend, but you've changed your relationship a bit is really helpful on both ends. I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. Perfect, okay, thank you. So I've talked to you about a little bit of this, but I'll dive in more. What Alight provides for you is that we've built this sponsor program to support you, to support sponsors, to make sure that you know what you need to do, when you need to do it, and you know where you need to go to get it. We've been able to connect people with people who want to donate items to the family. We've been able to connect people with jobs, with housing, lots of different things. That dedicated Alight guide is going to be with you from the moment you decide, I'm in, I want to do this, to after that and after that and after that. We have toolkits to help you understand, okay, how do I fundraise? What does that look like? What does housing look like? What does education look like? We have weekly Q&A sessions on Zoom for people to be able to pop in, ask questions. We have 2 per week. That doesn't mean that you can't schedule time outside of those weekly times to meet with your Alight guide, but it's dedicated time that they set aside weekly to be able to just open the room for you. We have ongoing support. We've actually started doing some gatherings, which have been really beautiful with families and sponsor groups. We have that e-learning training. We have a ton of resources. We want to be there for you every step of the way, and also just be there for you to talk to. You know, if you have questions and you're like, okay, this is what's happening, can I just talk to somebody? We want to be that support system for you as well. The other thing that I'll note is that fundraising, we have a fundraising platform that you can use. You can customize your fundraising page to talk about your group, the family you're supporting, share that out with your networks via Facebook, via email, via text, however you'd like to share that out to help bring in those funds. And then we just transfer those funds to you when you need them via a wire transfer. I always like to note that because sometimes people are like, okay, then how do I get the money? Otherwise, you can always use a GoFundMe as well. We've had people use both and feel a lot of success in that. We also have recommendations for how to maybe make that page make people feel more inclined to donate. You know, we have lots of different little tips for you so that you know what's worked really successfully. The other thing that I love is that we've now gathered a group of really successful super sponsors, as we call them, who've been in the process for a long time, who've welcomed families, who've had families here who've been here for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, have been in the process and can tell each other what's worked well, what hasn't worked well. If Facebook is your jam, we have a Facebook group for sponsors to connect to one another, share resources, say, hey, my neighbor wants to donate this bed. We don't need it. Does somebody else need it? I've seen that happen. Help connect with jobs. One of our sponsors actually works at a housing program that helps people who are lower income get into affordable housing. She's been a great support system. So we have all these people who kind of help share with one another to build this network of people that never knew each other before, which is really exciting, make Minnesota and make our communities very welcoming for people who are newly arriving. I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. So, you know, we've talked about this quite a bit. We've seen this everywhere we've worked, that the difference between somebody who has been displaced and has been through quite a bit, much more than any of us can ever even fathom, having the difference between them flourishing and feeling really lost is having that anchor, that support system, that neighbor, that friend, that welcomer. And that's what the sponsor group truly provides. I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. So you don't need to email me for next steps. We have sign-up sheets here. If you decide, yeah, I wanna continue discerning this. Once again, that note that just because you fill that out doesn't mean I'm gonna email you tomorrow and be like, you got a family coming. Not at all. It means that you're saying, yes, I wanna continue the conversation, and you can email me so that we can continue that conversation. From that point, I'm gonna have people who, maybe somebody today, after today, and I'm gonna love it if somebody after today is like, actually, I've discerned, this is great, I wanna do it. I love that. If that's how you feel, I'm just gonna have you fill out an intent form that basically says, yep, I'm in, let's get this process started. Otherwise, what that email is going to do is just open space for us to have more conversations. I'm happy to talk with you about, you know, questions that you have. We will have time for questions after this. I'm going to note after we go to the next slide, some of the big heavy hitter questions that I get. I'm going to say those to begin with. I've mentioned some of them, and then I'm going to open it up. And I really welcome all the different questions. I've hosted now probably 50, not more than that, you know, many info sessions, and I've heard all sorts of questions. I welcome any of them because I understand that it's a process to think through, and many things probably pop into your head. I'm gonna have you go to the next slide. So this picture, and I know I mentioned it before, this picture is the picture of the first sponsor group that was welcoming a family at the airport. That family, you're gonna see in a video in just a moment, be highlighted. Since their arrival, they have enrolled their 2 twin daughters in school. They have moved into more permanent housing. We had a driver's test be taken. The gentleman, the father in the family, he actually was incredibly highly trained as a train engineer. He worked on the train systems in Ukraine, and he interviewed for over 200 positions because he really wanted to find the right position for himself, and he actually just accepted a job a few weeks ago, which is amazing. So really big moments that have happened. The family has learned English quite a bit. That is a question that I get a lot. Do people speak English? People speak all different ranges and have all different English language levels. I've had families who have been fluent. I've had families who've, you know, decided I want to roll in English classes. I want my kids to be in English learning language settings. I'm going to tell you a really sweet anecdote about this family, and then we're going to watch a video. They have a young, like 2-year-old daughter. You'll see her in the video. And people always ask me, okay, so let's say people don't know English that well. How do we communicate? And I always hold up my phone and I'm like, you just You talk into Google Chat, you share it, and then they talk into Google Chat and they share it back. And the sweetest story about this family is that the daughter's about 2, and she started actually picking up the TV remote and talking into it, trying to show it to people, because she thought people were going to be able to translate. She thought that was like how you did it then. And so what a sweet story that kind of breaks down those really heavy barriers that we often think about, like how am I going to communicate with somebody who might not speak the same language I do? And that's what happens. A baby holds up a remote and talks into it, and it becomes this really sweet story of arrival and of someone learning new things on both sides in this community. So I'm going to show this next video, and then I'm going to open it up for many questions.
We were so excited to meet them at the airport, and as we were anxiously awaiting for them to come through the international arrivals, we were thinking about their future and everything that it could hold. When you read about what's happening in Ukraine with the war, you're just absolutely helpless when you think about that. But when you realize that you can make an impact on one person, on one family, you are making an impact on the world. This experience has been absolutely amazing, and I am certain that one person can change the world, one relationship at a time.
We have lived abroad, and we know how difficult and isolating that can be. And we also know how much small acts of kindness mean something tremendous. The financial part of the whole thing is a little bit scary at the beginning, to think of, raising enough money to help this family be fully supported for 3 months until they get their work permits and can become more independent. But so many people came on board and wanted to help, and we were able to raise more money than we set our goal for. So that part of it has been actually one of the easiest parts of it.
We left Ukraine, and it's work, it's home, it's our friends, but I need to do because I have 3 daughters and my wife, and they must be safe. I hope with my daughter found best life, new friend, and she be happy.
It takes work to create a relationship with someone who's from a different culture. It creates a special kind of relationship with those people. We really love this family. They're important to us, and we want to see them succeed, and we're glad that their family and these girls are safe.
This has been an amazing process, and we realize that we really haven't been alone. There are so many people that are helping in so many different ways. You never know who knows someone that has what we need, and you never know who knows someone that knows how to do something that we don't know how to do.
I think anybody who has their heart in the right place can do something like this. You don't look back and say, I really shouldn't have done this. You every day you feel more like this was a good thing.
You all so much for watching that with me. And that's just one of many, many, many stories that now we've been able to hear and to tell and to hold up as really beautiful ways that people have decided, yeah, this is something I want to do, and then they've made that difference in a family's life. So I want to open it up for questions. We have about 13 minutes. Yes, perfect. I think we have...
While you're doing that, we're going to pass out the sign-up sheets. If you're
Perfect.
interested, if you're not on the list already, you can put your name at the back.
Wonderful. Okay, and feel free to be asking. We can multitask here. You can ask your question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Wendy Antberg, and my question is, what happens after 2 years? If you get a 2-year trial?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a few things could happen, and I will say what's happening in Ukraine is going to inform what happens in 2 years, and also each individual's family's ideas of how they want to continue kind of building or go back home. So we have seen many populations in the United States who have been under humanitarian parole have that be automatically extended. So let's say something is still happening in their home country, the war is still going on, or if something worse happens, then often it does get automatically extended. If not, there are other pathways for people to go through. I can't speak to what every single family would then go through if they decide to go that next step. We would tell that family to consult an immigration attorney. We have many who are pro bono who can help connect with people, but then they would kind of discern what their next step is. However, if a war is still happening, I would think that it'll probably be a pretty easy pathway to either extending that parole period or going to whatever that second step is. Maybe it's temporary protected status or something else.
My name's Adele Hansen. I have a similar question because on the video it said that there would be a 3-month wait for a work permit.
So this video was made in September or October. Since then, so that is an outdated piece now. U.S. policy announced that Ukrainians are available to work upon arrival in the United States. Also, their work permits are often pushed through a bit faster. And so they can work, and I don't want to get into all the nitty-gritty details because it can be kind of confusing, but they'll receive something called an I-94. That I-94 can be used to show that they have the ability to start working. They still need to apply for a work authorization permit and show it within 90 days of starting a job, but they can start a job without one. And we've had a few of our sponsors are lawyers and have written this official notice to give to employers when people are seeking employment to be able to show. I've had a lawyer look over this and say, yep, this is acceptable.
Hi, my name's Wayne Groff, and I wonder how your organization handles lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities. Mm-hmm. And I understand with the Welcome US, probably you could define something there, but our congregation is very supportive of that group of people, and I think they suffer the most as refugees because they don't have as much of a support group in those countries.
They absolutely do. So something that we often talk about is that members of the LGBTQ community are often the most vulnerable refugees in any situation. We did actually have a gentleman, his name is Bruce, and he's part of the LGBTQ community himself, and he said it was really important for him to be able to support a couple that identified within that community. So we were actually able to break the system that Welcome.us has and actually work with Welcome.us to find an LGBTQ couple that him and we paired a bunch of people together in his sponsor group that they were able to support, and they arrived in, I want to say November. So that family, that they arrived in November. They want to remain anonymous, but they're actually being featured in Lavender magazine, I think next month. And so I'm really excited for that publication to come out. But we have been able to work with them. Our organization, I'm just going to note this, we also work with, we are under our organization of families, we work with an organization called ORAM. ORAM works specifically with the LGBTQ community, and we've also worked with them to help navigate and I'll say that it's been really hard to find people who self-identify from Ukraine as that, because there is quite a bit of discrimination within Ukraine. And so we've been able to find kind of backdoor ways to help bridge sometimes that complication with people not wanting to self-identify and build some protection into that to help provide safety as well. So if that's something that your group is interested in, where you're like, I really want to do that, I think we can definitely go to welcome.us again and say that's something that we're really interested in. or work with ORAM and our community of people on the ground in Ukraine to see if we can make a really intentional match that way. I worked really beautifully for this couple that arrived in, I want to say, once again, I think it was November, but it might have been early December. It worked really beautifully for them, and it was a really wonderful way for community members to actually support people that they felt really called to support as well. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. One is for people who are perhaps unable physically to aid in some of the things needed to be done. Is there a role for them? And then, do you have a sense of a time frame from when the decision is made to when the family might actually be able to arrive?
I love it. My favorite part of question and answers is it shows me all the things I forgot to say, even though I've done this so many times. So one thing is absolutely, I've had many people who've actually supported a group from afar. I have a woman right now who is living in Florida, and she's helping her group right now. She's not even here. So I think there's a few different ways to kind of break down group responsibilities. Some are those more maybe in-person ways. I've also had people say, I'm really not comfortable being in person right now. That's okay too. I really believe in meeting people where they're at and finding what the best path is for them. But really building a group where different people can have different strengths and have different roles. So maybe instead your role is calling a school, you know what I mean? Calling a school and helping get the kids enrolled in school via phone. There will be some more, kind of in-person things. I will say that once again, how the group decides to engage is really going to help show kind of how they show up. I've had groups who've said, we don't really drive much ourselves. We don't really want to do much driving. And I've recommended they get an Airbnb close to a metro station, decide, maybe ride public transport the first 2-3 times with the family, and then have the family take it from there. There are different ways to kind of, have your group show up in ways that make sense for your group. But we often recommend that each group kind of takes different areas. So maybe you become the budgeter, or maybe you become the person who calls the schools, or maybe you become the person that's going to help file a form for them. The family will also have a case manager at a resettlement agency that is aiding in all those big things, getting a social security number, getting employment authorization filled out, helping get them signed up for benefit programs. So that person is going to help kind of move things forward, but that group is meant to really support in all the other ways. So lots of different ways for you to kind of work through that. Second piece that I'm going to talk about is the time from decision to arrival. It varies person to person and group to group based on the family's need and also the group's need. I've had a group who've said, we're all going to be out of town in March, so can we skip March? And I'm like, yes, skip over March, that's just fine. But what it tends to be is that the moment that you decide, it's about 8 to 10 weeks. I've seen longer, I've seen shorter. I will say processing time for the I-134A forms has become a bit longer. We saw it before the new year be more like 2, 3, 4 days. Now it's more like 2 weeks. The only time thing that you need to pay attention to is once travel authorization is given, and that means you've moved through the beginning steps, you've matched with a family, you've filled out the I-134A forms, the family needs to travel within 90 days. Travel authorization is open for 90 days. I will note we've had some people successfully extend it based on needs that are kind of outside of their control, but I'd say generally it's about 8 to 10 weeks, and now we're kind of starting to trend more on 10 to 12.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
There you go.
My name's Jean, and you keep mentioning Airbnb.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious why, because I've done Airbnb. There's a whole big change with Airbnb now and regulations and things. So just a home is fine. You don't necessarily have to have people registered through Airbnb.
No, I often do that because it kind of helps set the picture for people. It's the easiest one that people kind of wrap their head around. I will say we've had many groups successfully use Airbnbs. There's also kind of an area of Airbnb, it doesn't work all the time, but of people who are actually donating their stays. So they're willing to open their Airbnb listings and donate it. But yeah, I mentioned Airbnb just because it's the one that kind of puts like temporary stay in people's brain, and it's the one that people have used the most successfully. And we've simply had people say, I'm a sponsor for a Ukrainian family that's arriving, so the people that are going to be arriving are this family instead. And I've never actually had a host say no to it. So that's been really good. It has worked really well. But I also had a gentleman the other day say, he's a sponsor, and he said, I actually really want them to stay at this residential hotel near my, like closer to my house. Totally fine. That works. Each group is going to kind of pick their different path, and we're there to help you kind of figure out and navigate that different path. Yeah.
Where are these people now? Are they in a refugee camp in Poland or where?
It depends on the country they're in. So they're kind of all over the place. I'd say people tend to fall into 3 spots. Some are still in Ukraine, and that's a little bit of a different journey. Some are in Poland. If they're in Poland, they're often in kind of a different type of temporary stay. Like I said, like gymnasiums, things like that. There have been some like homes that have been brought up. We have a family who's arriving from Germany. They're in a refugee camp in Germany. So I also have a family in Romania now, once again in more of a refugee camp. So it kind of depends on like where the family was able to safely go. But I'd say we're split. There hasn't been like a big, like 50% is there, 50% is here. It's kind of a little percentage all over, with many people still in Ukraine as well.
I think this may be our last question, so we'll bring it to a close. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paulina. I have organizational questions. So based on their experience with the families that have arrived, so what works best in terms of the groups? So say, how many people should be in a group? What should be the split between those who are really active and those who are kind of second supporters? And also, what's the usual, if that's possible to say, time investment from the people in the group? Sorry for so many questions.
No, that's okay. And this is a nuanced question because it looks really different based on the group. And I'll say that in the fact that right now I have I have 2 people who are retired and don't have a ton on their calendar. I'm not saying all retired people don't. I know a lot of you do. But they are 2 retired folks who really don't, and they're doing it on their own. And they're great, and they love it, and they want to do it on their own. I have a group right now of 18. That group of 18 is a little big, I will say. But I think, like I said, what kind of works best is about 4 to 8. You trend higher on the 8 side if you have people that are kind of more committed outside of it. 4 if you're like, we're going to do this. And then I will say most people involve 10 to 12 other people outside of that group in kind of small moments, small acts of kindness, which is really key. So I'd say that tends to work best. Timing breakdown is going to be really different based on how the group wants to engage. I will say I've had some groups who have been pretty hands-off. Like they were like, we're going to help you get set up for things. We're going to be pretty hands-off. That's okay. That's totally fine. What I've generally seen, and reminder that this is kind of for the whole group, is that the first week is more like 20 to 25 hours. Second week is more 15 to 20. Third week is more 10 to 15. Fourth week is more 5 to 10. And even that, I'm including in-person time, texts, phone calls. I'm including all of that together. You might have a day where you decide to go to the Social Security office, and I'm going to tell you going to the Social Security office is going to take a few hours. That's going to be a different time commitment. Or maybe you're going to help get the kids, they're going to help with their first day of school. You're going to help get them to their first day of school, welcome them. That might take a few more hours. We see that first month in really being the primary time, and then it continues to drop lower and lower and lower. I'm just going to mention these 2 things, and I know we're out of time, so I want to keep this brief. I recommend a few things for groups. Create a shared Google Calendar. Say, I'm free on Tuesdays, I'm not free Wednesday through Friday, whatever it might be. Help kind of share that. If you're hosting in a family in your home, have a whiteboard where, similar to if you have like a whiteboard where you write, we're doing this that day, this day, you kind of help kind of parcel out when you're available. I've even told people who are hosting in their homes, tell a family if like Sunday is your quiet day or your community day, and you're maybe not going to be able to provide very much hands-on support, but they know where to call you if you need something. There's lots of different ways for you to kind of help make it work. And that's why we pair you with an Elite guide. That's been the most essential part of this program, is having people work one-on-one with someone who knows the family that you're sponsoring and also knows your group and can help make recommendations like that. Or make a recommendation like, if you can't be in person, these are things you can do. So we really want to work with you on all those custom pieces. Okay, I know that we're out of time.
Okay, so many more questions.
I'm sure.
Oh, Stephanie, thank you. Big applause for, not just for being with us here today and so beautifully laying out the program. It's clear that you're passionate about your work and you love to talk about it, but for all you do in the world. Really grateful for the way you show up and showing up with us today. Did everybody get to sign the clipboard that was going around? It's still going. So don't leave without putting your info on that. Remember, that doesn't mean that somebody's coming to your house next week or that you need to be at the airport. But I'm already planning that airport greeting party. That's going to be a good time. Catherine, Jordan, Bob Adderhold, and Bernadine Joslin are the kind of our core leaders here. So if you have questions, reach out to them. And thank you for what you're doing. Yep. There may be some other questions that folks can stick around and ask, but some of us have to go to our next climate justice team meeting because lots happening. Okay.
So we're just the callers of all of you, and I'm so thrilled that you all came. This is fabulous. So what we'll do is we'll take all the notes from what you write and who's interested, and we'll get back to you. And then Steph will also will be in touch. So we're just trying to figure out if there's maybe a show of hands. Who's interested in helping?
Oh my gosh.
More than 18. Wow.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. So thank you so much. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you all. Have a lovely day. I'll be in touch. I'll email you.
Great.